While NASA keeps pushing back Artemis, China just did something that nobody saw coming. On February 11th, 2026, China conducted a Max-Q abort test. If you don't know what that means, let me put it this way. It's one of the most dangerous, most critical safety tests in all of human spaceflight. It's the test where you prove that if everything goes catastrophically wrong during the most violent part of launch, your escape system can still save the crew. NASA hasn't done this test for Artemis yet. China already has. And that's just the beginning, because what China is building right now isn't just a moon rocket. It's an entire crewed lunar system, so methodically designed, so thoroughly tested, and so politically charged that it might actually beat NASA and SpaceX at their own game. And here's the most shocking part, they're doing it with less money, fewer resources, and a strategy that makes NASA's approach look, well, kind of wasteful. This isn't just about planting a flag. China is playing a completely different game, and by the time you finish watching this video, you'll understand exactly why their approach might actually be genius. Let's start with the plan itself. China's approach to landing people on the moon is fundamentally different from what Apollo did, and it's fundamentally different from what NASA is trying to do with Artemis. Apollo used one massive Saturn V rocket to send everything to the moon at once. The command module, the service module, and the lunar lander all stacked together. It was elegant, but it required an absolutely enormous rocket. NASA's current Artemis plan uses a similar philosophy with the Space Launch System, though they've added the complexity of a separate Starship landing system from SpaceX. China looked at all of this and said, what if we just don't do that? What if we split the mission across 2 launches instead? Here's how it works. Launch number 1, a Long March 10 rocket, sends the crew spacecraft called Mengzhou into lunar orbit with 3 astronauts aboard. Launch number 2, another Long March 10 sends the lunar lander called Lanu to the same orbit. The 2 vehicles rendezvous and dock just like spacecraft do at the International Space Station, except this is happening 384,000 kilometers from Earth in orbit around the moon. 2 astronauts transfer into the lander. The 3rd stays with Mengzhou. The lander descends to the surface. The crew spends somewhere between 6 to 8 hours exploring, collecting samples, and conducting experiments. Then they fire up the ascent stage, launch back into lunar orbit, rendezvous with their crewmate waiting in Mangjo, and everyone comes home together. This 2-launch architecture is brilliant because it means China doesn't need to build a rocket as powerful as the Saturn V or the SLS to achieve a lunar landing. They can use a smaller, cheaper rocket and just launch it twice. It's not a compromise, it's a strategy, and it's one that removes a huge amount of technical risk from a single launch vehicle. So let's talk about that rocket. The Long March 10 is a beast, but it's not a super heavy lift vehicle. It stands 90 meters tall, uses a 3-stage configuration plus 2 side boosters, and it's designed to deliver 27 metric tons to lunar orbit. For comparison, that's basically identical to NASA's current Space Launch System, which is one of the most powerful rockets ever built. But here's the clever part. Instead of developing brand new experimental engines, China is using their YF-100 kerosene engines. These are proven. They've been flying on other Long March rockets for years. The first stage and the boosters each use 7 of these engines, giving the rocket a combined thrust of about 1,000 metric tons at liftoff. In 2025, China conducted a major static fire test where they ignited all 7 first-stage engines simultaneously. This was China's largest rocket propulsion test ever. And it worked. That's not a PowerPoint presentation or a render. That's actual hardware bolted to a test stand producing real thrust. The Long March 10 has a test flight scheduled for 2027. If that goes well, the rocket will be ready for operational missions by 2028 or 2029. And there's one more piece to this. China is also developing a reusable variant called the Long March 10A. The plan is to have the booster cores perform propulsive landings similar to SpaceX's Falcon Heavy, except instead of landing legs, China wants to catch them using a system of mechanical arms. It sounds ambitious, but if it works, it dramatically reduces the cost of each launch. And cost matters when you're planning to fly dozens of missions to build a permanent moon base. The crew capsule that will carry Chinese astronauts to the moon is called Mengzhou, which translates loosely to Dream Vessel. It's China's next-generation spacecraft, designed to eventually replace the Shenzhou capsules they've been using for space station missions. Mengzhou is bigger, more capable, and built from the ground up for deep space. The capsule has 2 main sections, a return module where the crew sits, and a service module that provides power, propulsion, and life support. For missions to China's Tiangong space station, Mengzhou can carry up to 7 astronauts. For lunar missions, it'll carry 3. Now, here's where things get serious. In 2025, China conducted a zero-altitude escape test. They put the capsule on a launch pad, ignited the escape tower, and watched it blast away from a simulated rocket failure. The escape system worked perfectly. The tower pulled the capsule clear, the parachutes deployed, and the airbags cushioned the landing. But the real proof came on February 11th, 2026. China conducted the Max-Q abort test. Max-Q is the moment during ascent when aerodynamic pressure on the rocket is at its absolute maximum. It's the worst possible time for something to go wrong, and it's the hardest abort scenario to survive. If your escape system can work at Max-Q, it can work anywhere. China flew a Long March 10 on a suborbital test flight. At the moment of maximum dynamic pressure, they triggered the abort. The escape rockets fired, pulling the Mengzhou capsule away from the rocket. It separated cleanly, deployed its parachutes, and landed safely. This is the kind of test that you don't do unless you're serious about putting people on top of your rocket. This is human rating discipline. And it suggests that China's 2029 timeline isn't just propaganda. They're working through the actual checklist you need to complete before you send astronauts to the moon. The next major milestone is an orbital test flight planned for 2026, where Mengzhou will dock with the Tiangong space station, proving that all the systems work in a real space environment. The lunar lander is called Lanyue. The name comes from an ancient Chinese poem. We can clasp the moon in the ninth heaven. It's symbolic, but it's also a 26-ton machine designed to keep 2 people alive on the surface of the moon. In 2025, China performed a landing and takeoff test of the Lanyue lander. This wasn't a full-scale rehearsal in space. It was a ground test conducted at a facility designed to simulate lunar gravity and surface conditions, but it validated the descent engines, the ascent engines, the landing legs, and the control systems. Why does this matter? Because the lunar lander is historically the most difficult part of any moon mission. It's where Apollo 13 had its explosion. It's where the Soviet Union's program failed repeatedly. The lander has to descend through a vacuum with pinpoint accuracy, land on uneven terrain without tipping over, provide power and life support on the surface, and then the ascent stage has to fire perfectly on the first try. Because there are no second chances. If the ascent engine fails, the crew is stranded. By testing the lander early and publicly, China is demonstrating that they understand exactly where the risks are, and they're addressing them head-on. This is good engineering practice. It's also a confidence signal. They wouldn't be showing this if they didn't believe it was working. The Lanyue lander will serve multiple functions. It's the crew's ride to the surface, their habitat while they're there, and their power source. It also carries communication equipment, scientific instruments, and storage for samples, everything the crew needs for their short stay on the lunar surface. Now here's where China's strategy gets really interesting. While they're building rockets and spacecraft, they're also building the invisible infrastructure that makes lunar operations possible. And they're doing it before humans ever arrive. In 2024, China launched Queqiao-2, a relay communication satellite that sits in a special orbit around the moon. Its job is to provide a communication link between Earth and the far side of the moon, which we can never see directly because the moon is tidally locked. Why does this matter for a crewed mission? Because reliable, high-bandwidth communications are essential for safety. If something goes wrong on the lunar surface, mission control needs to know about it instantly. The crew needs to be able to transmit data, receive instructions, and stay in constant contact with Earth. Along with Queqiao-2, China also launched 2 experimental satellites called Tiandu-1 and Tiandu-2. These are testing technologies for a future lunar navigation constellation. Think of it as GPS for the moon. Right now, if you're on the lunar surface, you have to navigate using star trackers and inertial guidance. But with a dedicated navigation constellation, you could get precise position data anywhere on or around the moon. The Chinese Academy of Sciences has been working on plans for a full Earth-Moon communications and navigation network. This isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a force multiplier. It means missions can operate with more confidence, take more risks, and accomplish more science. It also makes China an extremely attractive partner for other nations who want to send missions to the moon, because they can tap into this infrastructure too. NASA is building similar capabilities, but they're trying to do it at the same time as their crewed missions. China is doing it first. In September 2024, the China Manned Space Agency unveiled the new Lunar EVA suit. This wasn't just a concept, it was a working prototype, and they demonstrated it live. An engineer walked onto a stage wearing the suit and performed a series of mobility tests, including squats, to prove that astronauts would actually be able to move and work on the lunar surface. The suit is designed specifically for the moon's environment. Hard vacuum, extreme temperature swings from minus 173 degrees Celsius in shadow to plus 127 degrees in sunlight. Razor-sharp dust that gets into everything and constant radiation exposure. It has to keep an astronaut alive and fully functional for hours at a time while they're climbing over rocks, collecting samples, and setting up equipment. Compare that to NASA's lunar suits for Artemis, which are still behind schedule and over budget. China already has an astronaut doing squats in theirs. Now let's talk about what's actually happening with NASA's Artemis program, because the reality is pretty grim. Artemis 3, the mission that's supposed to land humans on the moon, has been delayed again. As of early 2026, NASA is saying no earlier than 2028. But if you've been following space news, you know that timeline is optimistic at best. The Starship lunar lander isn't ready. The new spacesuits are behind schedule. Every major component is facing technical hurdles and cost overruns. Watching Artemis is like watching a train wreck in slow motion. It's painful, it's expensive, and nobody seems to know when it's actually going to work. And SpaceX, Starship is revolutionary. Nobody questions that, but revolutionary and ready are two very different things. Starship is still in its test flight phase. It has not yet carried a payload to orbit. It has not docked with a space station. And the version designed to land on the moon is arguably the most complex iteration of an already extremely complex vehicle. SpaceX moves fast and breaks things. That philosophy works great for iterative rocket development. It is a very different philosophy from the one you want when two astronauts are descending to the lunar surface in a vehicle that has to work perfectly on the first try. Now, compare all of that to China. China says they will land astronauts on the moon before 2030. And unlike most space program timelines, we should actually believe this one, because 2029 marks the 80th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. This is a date that carries enormous political weight. It's their version of a national founding celebration commemorating Mao Zedong and the Communist Party's victory after 2 decades of civil war. There is essentially zero chance that the Chinese Communist Party is going to let this deadline slip. This isn't just space exploration, this is political theater on a cosmic scale. And when politics and engineering align like this, with this much national prestige on the line, things get serious very fast. The hardware is tested, the rockets are firing, the abort systems work. The lander has been tested on the ground. The communication infrastructure is already in orbit. The spacesuits are already being worn. And there's a political deadline carved in stone. China isn't hoping to land on the moon before 2030. China is engineering it. Every single test, every single satellite, every single demonstration leads to one moment. 2 Chinese astronauts stepping onto the lunar surface, planting a flag, and proving to the entire world that the United States is no longer the only nation capable of putting humans on the moon. The question is no longer whether China can pull this off. The question is whether anyone else can stop them.